Welcome to Brevard Meets. My name is Kevin Jeffrey, your moderator, and in this series, we want you to meet some of the most interesting people in Brevard County, and that brings us to Mark Lightner, and he's a very interesting figure. He is running for State Senate Seat 19 to replace Randy Fine, who just kind of warmed his seat up there for a second before he moved on to greener pastures. Welcome, Mark, to Brevard Meets.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much.
I want to say this before we start talking to Mark. Do you know that 6 people shared a record for the youngest state legislatures in American history at 18? 295 people share the age of our guest today, Mark Lightner, who is 24, and he's one of 4 candidates vying for that office to replace Randy Fine. Now, that district stretches from State Road 405 in Titusville all the way down to Miko. A special election primary is scheduled for April 1st. And then a special general election will be held on June 10th. Now, for the record, Amber Mariano holds the Florida record for being elected November 1st, 1995 at the tender age of 21. So, Mark, you've got it by 3 years. If victorious, Lightner will join such political heavyweights as former Speaker of the House Tip O'Neill. He ran and was elected at 24. Also, former President of the United States, Franklin Pierce, he's got started at 24, and New York Senator Chuck Schumer. I don't know if you want to be in the same category as those guys, but and so Chuck Schumer, he started at 24 as well. But the point is well taken as you look at it. It's over 295 people who, as you look back in history, started at the age of 24 running. So the question will come, well, 24, isn't that too young? What would you say to someone?
I would say it's not at all. And I would say in this race, I hope to be 296, by the way. But in this race, that is my advantage, ultimately, is my age. And I think that a lot of people are ready to see some fresh minds, some fresh faces, and that is my benefit. And that I'm nearly 50 years younger than my my opponents.
But you want to exploit that advantage, will you?
Not at all, not at all, not at all. But so that really provides me a whole different perspective on life. You know, I grew up in an age where phones and technology were a big part of my life, a big part of my childhood, and it's an increasing part of our, government, of our daily life, of my children's life. So that's an important thing, and I think that's an important perspective to have and an important understanding to have that I think my other opponents say they don't understand the gravity of technology and what it can do. So I think that is an important perspective.
Do you think as far as the younger generation is concerned that, I showed my granddaughter like her rotary phone and things of that nature. She has no idea. I mean, she's never seen anything like that before. That looks like some kind of an ancient thing. The younger generation has never known some of that other technology, and all they know is the technology that we are acquainted with today. So does that give you an advantage, you think? Yeah,
I think it does give me an advantage, and the advantage comes in many forms, and one form is protection. So a lot of the older generations don't realize the power that these tools have and how dangerous these tools could be. So from a personal experience, in first grade, I was exposed to pornography at a very young age. Like, no first grader should be exposed to pornography, but because of the devices and the access to internet and really
kids who have phones,
exactly,
they can access it pretty easily.
Seriously, it's super dangerous for kids at a young age, and parents are starting to realize that danger. But I think the legislative body, it's not even. I don't think it's being addressed in the way it should.
So do you think that they don't understand what's happening with it?
So it's perspective, right? Like they didn't grow up in that day and age. They didn't grow up with phones in their faces at a young age. And now the world we live in, my job, I can't have my job and not have my phone. Like the day and age we live in today, you can't not operate without a phone. Like you have to have a phone. So, but it's just a matter of being smart with the devices, and there's good and evil, and we just need to, take them both, but, be weary and be protecting our youth, from this technology that is evil.
So we had a friend that had a granddaughter that was staying with her, and she tried to ground her, and she removed I think it was the phone, but she had another means of using the television, of getting to the internet, right? Which she didn't understand that.
Yep.
So you think that that's kind of typical?
Yep, for sure. Yep, seen everywhere. I see it in my parents, I see it in my grandparents, I see, super common that they just don't grasp how it fully works, because they didn't grow up, who's to blame them? That's not what they grew up with. Just like I don't grasp how, a lot of the older technology fully works.
Like rotary dial
Exactly.
phones or party lines, or you probably wouldn't even know what that was. But tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you grow up? You grew up here in Brevard County?
Yep, I was born at Holmes Regional right there in Melbourne. I grew up through the public school system. I graduated from Beer High School. I loved Brevard. I knew before I even moved away to college that I'd be coming back to Brevard. I'd be raising my family in Brevard and starting my career in Brevard, and that's what I did. So I moved away after high school, went to college at the University of North Florida, got my bachelor's degree. Second day of college, met my first girlfriend. She's now my wife of 3.5 years, and now we have a 1.5-year-old. And almost instantly after we got married, we moved back here. So this is where I want to be, and this is, it's my home. So.
That was a pretty wild romance there. I mean, how did you know? What was it about her that made you think that she was the one?
So God. Part of the reason why she was my first girlfriend is because I knew that I didn't just want to date. Our culture today is the dating culture, and that's just not healthy. That's not, what it's meant to be. We're meant to date to marry. So that was my intention, and, it just so happened that God put the perfect person, in front of me, and I knew that I knew.
So this is not like trying out a new car. I mean,
Exactly.
there's some expectation of what you're looking for in a wife, and so when you see it, you know that that's her, right?
Exactly. Yep.
So you guys have been married for how long now?
3.5 years. So we both got married when we were 20, and now I'm 24.
So you see that as probably one of the more important things that you can be involved in, right? You said that that's your primary mission?
Yep. My primary calling in life is to be a husband and to be a father, and to do that with God at the center of my life. So, and I wish, the main reason that we have all these issues that we have in the public setting and, around the world is because a lot of people, especially men, they don't realize that is their highest calling. It's not their career. It's not the public service. It's not being a politician. It's being a loving husband and being a loving father, and everything else stems from that.
So how do you think we got to the place where that's not the case?
A lack of God in people's lives. So
you think secularism kind of creeped into the culture?
Yep.
Different structures in the culture.
And part of it's through our devices, so definitely creeped in.
So do you see a future where that's going to change?
Well, if you read the Bible and read Revelation, I hope that it changes. That's my desire. But we live in a fallen and broken world, and it's steadily gotten worse and worse, I think. Of course, there's periods of growth and prosperity, but if you think about the evil that's happening around the world, I would hope that it changes. Of course, where would we be without hope? So,
So what do you bring to the table? So you're talking about the fact that you're an example in that, and that that's your main focus, and everything else kind of lines up behind that, right? So exactly. You would put what, God first, your family, and then everything else?
For sure. Yep, that's the order, and I wish more people realize that that's the proper order.
What happens? I mean, why are you so strong on that? What do you think happens when you don't have that order?
So I've seen what happens. I've seen that in my family firsthand. So pretty much through my father. I grew up with him struggling with drug and alcohol addiction, and him choosing drugs and alcohol over his family. And throughout my childhood, he went through a Christian rehabilitation center where God was the focus of that rehabilitation center. So he would get out of this rehabilitation center, and he would have God at the center of his life. Like, God was his main priority. And because God was his main priority, then his family was above all else. That was just his reality. But I saw that as soon as he didn't have God as his main focus, then he started turning to the world, and everything else suffered because of that. So I had a prime example in my life, and I chose that, hey, I don't want to hurt my family, and I want to love my family and be a great husband, a great father. So I have to focus, my focus has to primarily be on God.
Why did you jump into this race?
So I had no intention at all, zero intention of jumping into this race. A year and a half ago, I had my daughter, and I started to really realize hey, it's important that we, these values that we have as Republicans, that they live on and they live beyond, my generation and me. And it's important because we have people that we care about that are going to be living on longer than us. So I slowly been looking into local politics and seeing just the games that our local politicians have played and the musical chairs, and it just really didn't seem right to me. And then that's when this whole situation happened with, the recent seat opening up, and then Debbie Mayfield stepping out of the office that she was just elected to. And I just saw it as wrong. And I, didn't hear of anybody announcing that they're going to run against her, or anybody announcing that they're going to step up. So I prayed about it, I discerned, and God was like, hey, why not?
So career politicians is a real issue. I mean, so you just have people jumping from office to office, and it's really gotten out of control, hasn't it?
No, for sure.
So do you think you can win this race?
I think I can, and I think that I have a unique advantage because people are tired of the games. Like they're, I'm not a politician. I work, my 5 days a week, my 9 to 5. I'm a regular guy. I, provide for my family. I live a super simple, meek life. But I think that perspective is the average person in Brevard. And that's the perspective that needs to be brought to Tallahassee, not this out-of-touch career politician, someone that just doesn't really know Brevard and doesn't know what the people actually are struggling with.
So on the back of that, so Debbie Mayfield was left off the ballot because of term limits, and the Supreme Court ruled in her favor that she could get back on the ballot. You have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think ultimately the Supreme Court ruled in the letter of the law. So if you read the law, it simply states that a candidate must be away for a period of time. So
that met the qualifications?
Exactly. So, and there was precedent. So I don't know the exact day, but or year, but a while back there was a guy who was away from his seat for 5 months or so and ran and won again. So there was precedent. So I think they ultimately ruled how the law was written, and I don't think it was written in the way that it should have been written. So I kind of was expecting this to happen for sure.
What's the state of politics today as you see it?
Very divisive. I recently started running Facebook ads for my campaign, and the amount of people that are just it's crazy. They're just, the stuff that they say to people is just wow, wow, the audacity.
So they fit you in a category?
Oh yeah, instantly, I'm this, this stereotype of this person. They think I'm some career politician or something. It's very strange, but it's super divisive, and it's kind of sickening a little way in ways. But I hope that more people step up that aren't so divisive, and that's what I hope to be. I hope to not be someone that's super divisive. Ultimately, we stick to our values, but we could do that in a proper way and setting, for sure.
So you have 4 different opponents in this race. Do you have any opinion of those opponents? And of course, Debbie Mayfield is one of them, and then you have the 3 others, 2 others. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Opinions, not really. So I don't know any of them personally. You could read about them on Google. So I don't really have any strong opinions about any of them. Yeah.
So I'm going to mention several issues, and then you tell me your views on them. First of all, I'm going to start with the fact that, have you read the Constitution?
A while back in school, yes.
Do you think it's important to read the Constitution to run for office?
Oh, I would agree, and that's why I'm going to take this book from you.
All right, thanks. Term limits. You mentioned it earlier. It's an issue, and Debbie Mayfield is probably the extreme of it. She's been in office for 16 years or so, and now she's turning around and running for the very seat that she just vacated for just a few months?
Yeah. Yep. a few months.
Left it warm for a second, but
Yeah.
she's back.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what do you think about term limits?
So the problem with people is, especially politicians, is that we see that the longer that they spend in office, the more corrupt that they become. And the longer they spend in office, I think that just promotes corruption, and it also hinders new ideas and new solutions to the legislative body. So if you have the same person in there for, she's been in our Florida legislative body for 16, going on 17 years now, and you could just imagine, like, if somebody else was in there, they could have just new and fresh ideas, So yeah, I think I agree with term limits. I do see that there is another side to it. The other side of the coin is, what if somebody does run and they're a great candidate and they're not this, evil, conniving politician, and then you limit their term essentially. So there is both sides, but I would agree that if you look at the broad picture of politicians, is that they really don't have the best reputation, and they tend to fall into the evil traps of politics. So I think term limits it's a healthy thing to have.
Did you ever see that meme? I saw a meme a few weeks ago that Washington D.C. is heaven's waiting room, or someone would actually say the opposite. But the point is well taken that there's so many people who have been in Washington for so long that they're going to die there.
Yeah, and part of term limits is that we the people, we're the ones that are voting these people in. That every, for say a Florida senator, every 4 years that office comes up for election. So we the people, we can vote them out of that office. So it's just a matter of having an educated.
But the system has kind of been skewed, hasn't it, though? Because once you're in office, you have some advantages of being in office that really hinders a newcomer, right, or an upstart.
It does, yeah, it does. Definitely hinders, but it's not impossible for newcomers.
No, it's not impossible. Yeah. But it's up to the electorate to actually keep up on what's going on. The Live Local Act.
Live Local Act, yeah. So essentially, passed not even that long ago, 2023, or 2023. So essentially the problem with this is that it's eliminating a lot of regulation, or essentially allows developers to sidestep regulation in the name of developing affordable housing, which I haven't seen such thing. So I'm wondering where that is. But the problem is that they're overdeveloping. So, and they're developing, and when they develop new areas, occasionally they develop those areas a little bit higher than older areas, which is ruining how the water flows. So it's flooding out older communities, which is overdevelopment is a cause, not the cause, but a cause of the rising home insurance prices, because the higher the risk, then the more money it's going to cost for insurance.
Which brings us to the home insurance crisis. There's a lot of people that are leaving Florida now, and really the housing market is beginning to be affected by it, and it's definitely because particularly a lot of older people can't afford the insurance. So do you have any solutions as to how that could be rectified?
Yeah, there really is not an easy, if there was an easy answer to that, I'm sure they would present it, but a solution to slow that, growth, or slow the prices down, is to stop the overdevelopment. It kind of ties into the last point, that if the reason that the home insurance is rising is because of risk. So, the home insurance companies, they have to also protect themselves. So the higher the risk, and that means, when they're overdeveloping areas, the risk is going up because those, the flood plain is getting messed up and the risk of flooding is going up. These risks are going up. So that's causing the price to go up. So if they stop the overdeveloping of certain areas, I think that you'll see the insurance prices go down.
What about the competition? Do you think that there's not enough insurance companies here to force the prices down through competition?
Yeah, well, that's the ultimate thing to force down prices, right, is competition. So, of course, we need to invite as much competition as possible, but it's just what companies are going to want to take that risk. So there's only there's only how many, insurance companies that are willing and able to insure.
So should the state or counties be responsible for the first responders? So in Brevard County, it's the county commission is responsible for funding and paying the first responders. And there was some question that the state maybe should be involved in that. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that it's a tough dynamic, right? Because that would put a pretty significant increase if you know, break that throughout the state on what that would cost the state. So I haven't like looked at the numbers specifically on what that would cost the state and, you know, how much that would affect the budget. But I think that should be a priority. So even if, you know, certain counties aren't able to afford proper pay, if they need to be subsidized by the state, I mean, I think that's something that it should be looked into, because it should be a priority. You know, first responders are sacrificing a lot to help the community. So I think regardless of who's, you know, who's paying for it, essentially, is, you know, that should be a top priority. So
Who does the constitutional power belong to as far as how you see the Constitution? Is it the, and I'm going to give you, I guess, a leading question. Is it the politicians or is it the people?
yeah, we the people, right?
Do you think that most politicians believe that?
No, not at all. And that's the problem. That's really why I'm running, honestly, is because I am we the people, you know, and I feel like my voice hasn't been heard. You know, I recently voted for somebody that they're just vacating, they're just leaving. Like, they're just like, oh.
After winning, right?
Yeah, in the name of helping we the people, I'm going to just leave. So that doesn't make sense to me, and that's really why I'm running. And I see that across the board for a lot of politics.
Is that an ethical issue as you win a race and then you say, oh, I'm going to jump over this race because there's another opening that wasn't, I didn't anticipate. I mean, is that ethical or what is that?
Yeah, I think it just shows true colors and true character, and that I think people will see through that, you know, and I hope that people see through that, because ultimately what that is choosing power over the people, because the people just elected you. Like, the people, to me, any public elected office, that's an honor. Like, the people are honoring you and lifting you up and edifying you and saying, hey, like, I want you to represent us in this position. And to me, it's a slap in the face to the community to say, no, I'm not going to take this seat anymore.
Well, it's kind of like being married, right? You date this woman and you sweep her off her feet, and now you're married to her and you see another woman, and say, oh, bye, honey.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like that. I mean, it's a lack of commitment, right?
Yeah. And to me, the question I have is, okay, what happens if a more powerful seat comes up?
Correct.
What happens? We already know.
You could continue to play this game of musical chairs.
Yep. You could play it out. So
last question: how do you expect that you're going to win this race? This is kind of like a David Goliath type situation, right?
Oh, yeah. I like the quote that we heard the other day: is the greater the giant, the louder the fall, or the greater
the harder they fall.
Yeah,
right.
The harder they fall. This is a big deal, and it's really going to take people getting out and voting. So if people don't turn out for this, then there's no chance. So it's people that are, I think, the younger generations that, a huge hope for my whole campaign is that my generation, the younger generations, say 40 and below, 50 and below, that we need to participate more. We need to be more active in this.
So why do you think they don't?
I think they maybe can't relate to a lot of the candidates. So they see an older person who, you know, maybe is highly educated or is a career politician or is super wealthy, and they just can't relate to them. So they're not super motivated to get behind the candidate and support them. And that's what I hope to, I'm essentially the opposite of that. You know, I'm not super wealthy. I have a bachelor's degree. I'm not a career politician. I'm just your regular guy that I hope that the younger generations can relate to, that, hey, you can run for office, you could win that office, and you can make a change in that office. And you don't have to go to the extreme of running for state senate, but you could support a candidate, you can run for your local government. Like, there's plenty of ways to participate in that. My generation needs to step up and start participating.
So the conventional wisdom has been up to this point is that you can't trust young people to get out and vote on election day.
Yep.
And you're aiming to change that?
Yep, that's my goal. That's how I'll win this race. It's getting 18 to 40-year-olds out and voting.
Mark Lightner, thanks for joining us on Brevard Meets. Appreciate meeting you.
Thank you.
And we wish you well.
God bless.
Yeah.